First of all, welcome everybody who's here. I appreciate that, your time and staying around for the last session. What we have today is we're addressing the cloud-enhanced convergence engine room. That could be many different areas and many different facets along those lines. But the one thing that we're going to have here today is an extremely talented, senior level group of experts, and I don't mean by senior with age, but definitely with the depth of intelligence and capabilities of their experiences around the world. The cloud's been around for a long time, but since quote unquote Apple came out with iCloud, it really didn't capture a lot of attention, and that could be for the good or the bad or however you may want to look at it. That saying, what we're going to discover today is why this is so compelling. What are the business models around this, and why we're looking at this in such an avid and rabid way at this time. So a little bit about me real quick. I'm Allan McLennan. I have a group up in Mill Valley, California called the PADEM Group. Been around for quite some time in the digital media environment and technology. If you might be able to go to the presentation, please, the first one, that'd be great. I've done a lot of firsts in the marketplace, well over 20, kind of like the canary in the mine shaft on many of them, but a lot of times really kind of looking at how the market is growing, how the market is evolving, and definitely how the market can shape up with the possible return for my companies as well as for the clients I currently work with. In this arena, what we can talk about is just telling the truth. When I sit with somebody and going through this, it's really kind of finding out what the reality of the market is and what the reality of the company is. That's as I mentioned, been gained from a lot of experience over many years with large companies, both here in America as well as across the seas. You can find that at the PADEM Group or at pademgroup.com, and I won't go into that right now. So without further ado, what we're going to go through here is we're going to go through presentations, very short presentations by each of the panelists to give you an idea of what they bring to the table, no pun intended. But the first one up is Steve Davi with SeaChange, and Steve's been around as long as I have. Through the development of the video-on-demand system. And in reality, isn't the video-on-demand system really a cloud? And we're going to let him go through that and go through his presentation. Steve?
Thanks, Alan. So I'm Steve Davi. I'm Senior Vice President of Advanced Technology at SeaChange International. And as Alan said, I've been involved in delivering video on demand for the last 14 years when we first started the introduction of delivering video through television on demand to subscribers. I have no way of controlling my slides, though.
Oh, apparently this works. I do.
So SeaChange International, for several years, as I said, 14, we've been worrying about delivering video on demand through the TV. And what we saw was a few years ago, as the explosion of time and place shifting devices came about, an expansion of content that's available on demand and ubiquitous network, we expanded to also being able to deliver video to mobile devices, to tablets, to PCs, and we delivered last year in 2010. We delivered over 6 billion television streams. But we also did over 40 million streams to other devices, to PC and mobile devices mainly. And so our main focus is not only enabling the infrastructure delivery of how to deliver those streams, but also how do you monetize that. We've been talking a lot over the last couple of days about monetization. It's been a big buzzword. But there's really three main things that we look at in terms of monetization. One is promotions, enable people to package stuff the way that people want to buy it. The second is through personalization, enabling people to find content as quickly as possible. And the third is advertising. Advertising, we enable. The business model on that, still unknown. So we'll see where that ends up going for us. But it's been pretty obvious if you sat here over the last couple days that there are definitely more ways than ever to access video content through all these new devices that are out there, all these different mechanisms. And with that, the consumer now is in control, right? They are in control in terms of determining what their viewing experience is going to be, what they are going to watch. The content out there is amazing. Some of the stuff that's happening, I don't know if people know about the BBC iPlayer, but they do over 100 million streams a month in terms of the content that they're delivering. And HBO Go, in the 6 months that it's been out, has done over 100 million streams as well too. So the content's there, but people are having trouble finding it, and so that's where they need the community aspects in order for them to help them discover this content. The one way of accessing that content obviously is through the cloud, right? And you could talk about what we've been doing in VOD as cloud delivery, because the main notion of cloud, as defined by Wikipedia, which is a great source, and one of the things I wanted to bring up with the students yesterday is I think it's a great source of information that we all use, but my son's not allowed to use it in their school. And for those of you that sat through the youth panel yesterday. The cloud is defined as the consumer not knowing where the service is actually coming from. So with what we've been doing with VOD, that's the cloud. They don't know where that video is coming from. But today, they need to know where it's coming from because of the way the services are being defined. So you look at a cloud, and I define the cloud as having 3 locations, public, private, and ultra-private. And by public, I mean it's out there on the World Wide Web, right? So this is, Netflix, this is Amazon streaming that you're doing, iCloud stuff that you put your own content into that, or ultraviolet, as we were talking about on Wednesday, I believe, in terms of the session there that enables you to buy the content and deliver it wherever you are. Content virtualization is at a tipping point where sales of music for digital version has exceeded physical versions. Netflix streaming is over 30% of prime time. There's a lot of activity in terms of putting stuff into the public cloud. And the advantage of putting it in the public cloud is that you can access it wherever you want. The disadvantage is that now you're pulling it across the internet and you have to worry about quality of service. So that's why service providers are looking at doing private clouds, basically putting stuff within their own infrastructure to deliver stuff to their consumers. There's a trade-off here. The trade-off is that you get better quality of service because the service provider can control it. The problem is that it might not be accessible to all devices. And so one ways in which they're doing that is you're seeing service providers do network DVR. And so the ability to record stuff on the equipment that's in the head end, and then be able to access that in your home, but then also being able to access it anywhere else as well too. And then finally, there's the ultra-private cloud, where you have home media gateways that are in your house, right? They're in your basement. Your cable plan is getting terminated there, and then you have IP connectivity to all the devices that are in your home for you to be able to watch content. And so it will deal with all of the security, DRM, conditional access, whatever. It will do the transcoding and basically becomes a server to deliver that video to any device that you have in the home. But with all of this comes some concerns, right? And we've talked about a lot of this over the last couple of days, actually. One is the content itself, right? Having the ability to have it, the license right for it in multiple formats, being able to protect it, watermarking, which is the latest thing that people are talking about as ways of enabling you to get content in an earlier window, so that you can release on-demand content the same day that it's in the theaters. There's concerns about network capacity, and do I have the network infrastructure to be able to pull all of this video across my network from the internet versus quality of service. And then clearly, monetization. And as I said, I think, monetization is an area where the technology is exceeding the business models. The technology is there to enable you to insert ads into content, but how much do you charge for it? What's the model where everybody can make money off of that? The technology is there for you to do promotions, but what are the best promotions that will entice people to actually buy the content? So there's a lot of experimentation that needs to be happening, and a lot of data that needs to be collected on that moving forward. In the interest of time, I'll just real quickly talk about 3UK. This is a mobile provider in the UK. They initially were doing their own in-house platform for delivering on-demand content to their subscribers. They weren't having very much success with it. People weren't watching it much. They weren't using it much. And the problem was, the core problem was that it was an a la carte service. People had to pay for every time they were watching the video, and they didn't see much value in that. We came in, we provided them technology for delivering that, but most importantly, we came in and actually changed the business model for them. We changed it to be subscription VOD and to be ad-based as well too. So the consumers were paying a monthly fee to access to the service, and then we're getting more premium content because of advertising that was supporting it. And as a result, the usage went up greatly, 400% increase in terms of usage. And the reason I bringing this up here is not only because of the experimentation that was happening with the business models, but also because this was being delivered over a level 3 CDN. So it was coming from the cloud to the mobile phones. And so, so with that, I think, the key really here is that, we need to look at the cloud services and where we're putting the content, but we also need to look at how you're going to make money off it, how you're going to pay for this infrastructure that you're putting in place, pay for this content. And so I think, you need to look at how do you aggregate it together for your consumers, how do you make it easy for them to find that content, right? Selling it in ways that they want it, and that might mean some bundling. I know we've talked about bundling being bad and the internet unbundling stuff, but people generally like to pay for stuff and get good value out of it, and then making sure that the consumers are able to get their content when and where they want it.
Yeah, and speaking to that, let's run that commercial real quick to show that the consumers are and how they're approaching this within the UK. Number 3. Is there someone back there?
So while they're setting it up, I'll just frame it a little bit. This is a commercial from Virgin Media. Oops.
Even on my mobile. So what are you hanging about for? Get in there.
All right, that was the end. Can we replay that?
Yes, please.
Look what I just discovered. Virgin Media Player. If you've got Virgin TV and broadband, now you can watch tons of TV shows online.
Just sign in, and voila, Virgin TV, whenever and wherever you want it.
Even on my mobile. So what are you hanging about for? Get in there.
So the interesting thing about the Virgin environment, and a great example of cloud services, is that the consumers are able to watch their content on any of the devices, right? Whether it's a PC, multiple mobile devices, their TV, they're able to bookmark it and continue watching it on one where they left off from the other. But what they don't know is that content is coming from multiple systems through multiple ways into their home. Because it is just off in the cloud, and so they don't understand that the way the mobile video is getting delivered is very different from the way that the PC video and the way that the TV video are being delivered.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks, Dave. Let's jump in with Ted. Ted Knight, May is the Senior Vice President at Synacor. Ted has been around for quite some time, from AOL broadband days, and also going back to Cablevision. With a lot of history as well that we all intersect with. Ted?
Thank you, Alan. I've got a few slides here on thoughts on clouds, which I'll try to breeze through pretty quickly. I suspect you'll see a lot of redundancy in our comments here, but I would just add, like real clouds, when you lie back and look at them and you see ships at sea or flying eagles, everyone sees what they want to see when they look at the cloud, and so we'll have slightly different takes on it. Synacor, by the way, for those of you who don't know, our marquee activity right now is enabling TV everywhere for our long list of cable, telco, and beyond clients for whom we provide a variety of digital services, online services, and value add, of which TV everywhere is becoming a much more important one. But basically, we're in an environment now with multiple sources of content, multiple devices, people accessing at multiple locations, as you just saw in this spot. The growth in video consumption is increasingly coming from these non-traditional sources accessing video. And I'm saying video specifically instead of television. Television is becoming a part of the larger video content offering. Fundamentally, it's incredibly, as we've heard over the last couple of days, disruptive, transformative in technology. Everything is changing. The concept of everywhere is really reinventing the entire ecosystem. And that is inexorable, inevitable. You can argue over the time frame, but we're really in the midst of a rapidly accelerating evolutionary process, if not revolutionary. So thoughts on clouds. Not one big dark cloud overhanging. It's really multiple clouds, as you were just saying. There are various levels at the programmer level, the network level, the operator level, the personal level. It's going to be a cloudy situation with multiple clouds. What's enabled by the cloud is really changing the television viewing experience, less like the old sit down and scroll through with your remote, and much more like we're accustomed to seeing with online content in general. Really infused, enabled, excited by all the capability of sharing, mashing, cataloging, personalizing, all the things that you can do with online content is now increasingly becoming available to the video experience. There are benefits here both for operators, programmers and operators, and for consumers, and you can really look at it from either end. On the programmer operator side, what the cloud really does is begin to help them leverage the investment, the large investment they have in assets and networks, and start to simplify what is really a very complex and complicated ecosystem right now as you layer all these different levels of service on top of each other for asset ingest, for the preparation of assets, for the distribution of it. It helps them more easily extend their reach beyond the television set out to all the different devices, and enables a variety of more flexible business models. I love the way everybody always asks, what's the business model or the business model, implying that there is only one, that it's a binary situation. Actually, the cloud enables a wide variety of business models, and there probably will be a wide variety of them. From the consumer perspective, I think it's fundamentally right now about syncing across multiple devices that is the biggest benefit to having a relationship to one or more clouds. So there's not the problem of I have this here, but it's not over there. How do I get it from here to there? Why do I have it here and not there? A cloud offering helps to really simplify the consumer experience, make it much more seamless and ultimately pleasurable and more valuable for them. It also provides a way of offering what I would just call professional management to the assets that are available to you. Right now, it does get very complicated. Is this a purchase? Is it a rental? Am I streaming it? Is it download? How do I, we've all been challenged our whole careers in terms of managing and maintaining our Windows files and backing up and having to, manage the clutter on our desktops. What cloud enables is a more professional approach to that on behalf of each individual consumer. And then ultimately security. I don't lose stuff when I drop my smartphone in the toilet. All is not lost. Stuff is in the cloud and easily recoverable and available. Some of the issues, it's really about shifting costs at the end of the day. As you look at re-architecting the system and getting some of the inefficiencies out of it and making it more much more efficient. At the end of the day, sometimes you're really shifting costs from storage to transmission bandwidth to devices and back and forward. And the ultimate question is who's going to bear that burden? There is a whole new level of infrastructure support that's required that many operators and programmers are just really not prepared for yet in terms of supporting the cloud, managing the cloud, optimizing the cloud. There's tracking and reporting, business rules, management of rights profiles, all of those kinds of issues that we're dealing with. Bandwidth caps, I think, is a very interesting, going to have a very interesting effect on the cloud because it's one thing to say, sure, it's up in the cloud, no problem. Oh, but by the way, every time you want to access that asset that you own or that you rented, you're going to pay a bandwidth fee for it, or it's going to eat away at your bandwidth cap. So in a way, there's going to be an interesting dynamic there. If users feel like they're paying a penalty for putting things in the cloud and accessing things through the cloud, they're going to be resistant. And then the last one, as we all know, is just the privacy question, is people are always uneasy about sharing and making too much of their personal ownership assets and activities available. These I won't dwell on again. These are as much opportunities as they are challenges. Opportunities for us, certainly, in our company, but also ultimately opportunities for everybody as we sort of remake the network to be more reflective of the cloud. TV everywhere, what we're doing there is really what I would call the vanguard in this effort, in terms of we're implementing all the things that are going to be required here, like accounts, sign-on, single sign-on, passwords, authentication, enabling a robust search and discovery or recovery opportunity, managing different classes of service, different levels of authentication, integration into billing systems. You know, one of the things, there's a lot of talk about cord cutting, obviously, here and everywhere. And just one of the things I want to stress is the cord, the fundamental cord, is really the billing relationship that you have, regardless of who it's with. It's not really the service cord that you've got, is that ultimately you have this relationship with the provider. I think Nielsen recently, 91 million households in America have some billing relationship for television with some provider in this country, and that's a relationship that is not going to be easily cut completely. It'll be transferred from one to another. The other thing that I think is really interesting that the cloud or clouds enable at the end of the day, and this is the last slide, is really how it changes our definition of what television programming is, and more specifically, what a television programmer is. And you know, I started out in the broadcast business where the definition of programmer was somebody who has the big, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday grid, and the networks and is slotting programs in here or there. Moved over to the online space where programmer, by definition, was somebody who sits and writes code. And we're really coming to a realm as you enable all this IPTV capability where a television programmer becomes a hybrid of somebody who really has to have all of the following skills. It has to be editorial, promotional, sales. You have to be a technologist. You have to be plugged into all the social demographics and use of social networking tools on top of pop trends, futurists, in order to start saying, how do I take this massive amount of content that's available in the cloud and present it in a rational, orderly, exciting way that doesn't overwhelm the customer with choice, but rather presents them with choices that they can make easily, pleasurably, and be excited about. And that's really what television programming is going to be. And things that are important to the operators are brand, customer ownership, customer service, better packaging and marketing and promotion than anybody else. And this notion of merchandising content, that there is all of this content available now that really needs to be merchandised in the same way that retailers of white goods, packaged goods have been doing for centuries, if not decades. Now that can start to be applied to content in this new environment.
There's one thing that's coming as a theme through this, and as Steve mentioned, there was usage uptake about 400% once it was made very easy and effectively to the consumer. They embraced it. Same thing going here. When there's the ability to have that content, you're seeing that those take rates are going up considerably. And now moving on to Jose DeFrancisco Lopez, who's the Director of Cloud Computing for Alcatel. Jose has lived in about 20 countries around the world and has really been embracing this for some time and has some real firsthand experiences. And then we're going to get right into the core of this after Alex. So.
Well, thanks for the introduction. It's been a terrific experience to be here with you guys for the past 3 days. And it really is a pleasure to be part of the closing session for MIS. But I think when we talk about cloud, it does pay to figure out what is it that the cloud is about, isn't it? And guys, I need your help. I'm going to ask 3 questions. I'm not going to expose anyone. I would just need to ask you for a brief show of hands. So question number 1 is, how many of you think that you guys know or have been exposed to the cloud? And most often than not, we see 80% of the hands up. Maybe in the closing session, you guys are tired enough. Thank you very much. So question number 2. Those of you who raised your hands, the next question is, how many of you think that you could define a cloud, that you could provide this crisp Wikipedia-style definition that gets it right? It's less hands, obviously. But then the third and tricky question is, out of those of you who raised your hands, how many of you think that you would agree on the one definition that makes sense to everyone? Then we see no hands. And this is consistent with all of the cloud computing talks I've been giving throughout the years. So the question is, why is that? Well, it's an emerging market, isn't it? It's very fragmented, everything plays, and all of us are waiting for what is it that's next. I work for Alcatel-Lucent, and as part of my brief introduction, I'm going to tell you that the next big thing is the carrier cloud. We made the announcement just a couple of weeks ago. We are launching platforms and technologies that support that belief. We are investing money behind it. And the carrier cloud makes sense in a fragmented market where the carrier can take the lead and benefit from a competitive advantage by just vertically integrating, as simple as that. But before I get down to business, Allan was asking me to brief you a little bit about my background and how that relates to the projects I've been working on. So before I joined the cloud computing team, just this past summer, I was the head of the IID practice, which stands for Ideation, Incubation, and Demonstrations at Alcatel-Lucent. And we were involved in these concept research, proof of concept projects about what's the social media, what's the cloud, how would the people experience it, so on and so forth. Really cool stuff, frankly. And hey, we got ourselves started by defining use cases, by realizing that when we benefit from the cloud or when we are exposed to the cloud, we individually deliver different use cases, different personas that are related to whatever context we may be in. Obviously, the Jose that you know here at this conference is 80% the same Jose you would know back in Chicago, but with a twist, isn't it? I mean, all of us deliver different behaviors depending on what is it that we are doing at any given point of time. So the challenge was, how do I represent that on a Facebook page? How do I change my avatar? How do I tweak my user agent so that people can understand that I interact differently with different groups, so on and so forth? So the first immediate option was to deliver a head scan, a CG of me, and the head would rotate so that you would see the 360 degree of me. That didn't pan out, at least the way we did it. Our second option was, hey, why don't we show different pictures of me doing different things in that little, squarish thing that you see at the upper left corner of your Facebook page or any other social networking site? That didn't pan out either. This thing about making someone staring at my slideshow for minutes to figure me out didn't do the job either. Interestingly enough, we had to go low tech. We went back in history to, let's say, early 20th century. We figured out that cubists, such as Picasso, were already up to the challenge. When you see a cubist picture, what is it that you guys are looking at? Isn't it like a reflection on a shattered mirror that projects you from different views? Isn't it, doesn't it look funny just because of that? And some people were dismissive of cubism back in the early 20th century. And it turns out to be very relevant for the project we were working on because there was a need for defining these different personas, contextually related, so we could nail down the right use cases to figure out how to take advantage of all of the cloud resources that exist. But as it so happens when working on innovation, the premise you start with is not necessarily the one you end up delivering at the end of the process. So all of this work translated into patents that we found last year related to reputation management, privacy management. Because at some point in this project, we realized that, and again, drawing from my background, having been to all of these many places, I could perfectly relate to the fact that we are going global. But that doesn't mean that by going global, my persona is being diluted. It's actually being enhanced. And the behavior in this global village is exactly that. We are expected to behave as if we were in a small village. Everyone gets to know us, and our reputation matters. And it does matter because it will stay there in the cloud for our lifetime and even beyond that. So what technology came out of this research project? What patent did we file? A simple privacy manager. Right now, if I have to manage my social media, I have to go to all of the social media tools that exist on the web, where I'm already a subscriber, to figure out what is it that they have done with my privacy, and then to tweak them one by one so that they meet my expectations. For goodness sake, I mean, that takes ages to do. Who can afford to tweak your social media settings over and over, over your lifetime? No one, frankly speaking. And these social media services do have the right, and they do have to update the way they manage privacy, because they need to continue to deliver the latest and the best improvements that they can. Now, let's look at the security market. Let's refer to a well-known paradox, which is antivirus in your PC. Do you guys go to every single application to tweak the security settings? Who does that? I would like to meet the person who does it. No one, yeah, no hands. And I'm not even asking this time around. So, hey, let's take advantage of that paradigm. Why shouldn't we have this cloud-based privacy manager where I go just once and I say, look, this is Jose doing this, doing that, and here is how I would like my reputation to be managed. At minimum, by setting how much privacy, how much information I am exchanging so that I can engage in the right social interactions. So this cloud-based centralized tool would then go to each social networking service to keep me up to date without me having to do anything. It gets even more interesting because now we are talking about cloud-based user agents that know more about us, and therefore these user agents, these technologies, become the best search engines you could possibly benefit from, since they will be mining and looking for things that are of interest to you 24/7, whether you are online or you are not online. It gets even more interesting when, from a human factors engineering standpoint, you realize that, hey, there is something that people in robotics know as the uncanny valley. And the uncanny valley is when the search engine, in this case, knows you so well that you are becoming suspicious of, hey, who is this thing working for? Is it working for me? Is it working for something else? Does it know too much about me? Does it behave like me? So there are many things that relate, once again, to our own experience that we leverage for the projects we work on. But I'm here to tell you about a better class of cloud. And
You could wrap that up. That'd be
sure.
great.
So, and this better class of cloud has a lot to do with many of the conversations that have taken place throughout this conference, where many people were talking about the cloud, and then in other conversations about the network. So this better class of cloud is one where things get vertically integrated, the cloud and the network become undistinguishable and transparent to the end user to a large degree, and there is just one single platform, one management tool that can efficiently orchestrate cloud and network resources. Again, the market is defining this as the carrier cloud, and we launched a solution that backs it up just a couple of weeks ago. This being my last chart, what you see here is the notion of a more agile, reliable, transformative architecture that changes things as we know them today. When looking at the carriers, the telcos architecture, the so-called cloudification could impact up to 80% of the existing telco assets. When you move into, and I do apologize for making up words, I don't know who else talks about cloudification, but I think you know what I mean by now. And then when you look at what is it that this means business-wise, there is a yin-yang effect by which there are significant cost efficiencies, double-digit cost efficiencies, CAPEX and OPEX-wise, and it frees up resources to further innovate. So my last bullet points as part of my introduction come down to 4 quick insights. Number 1, automated provisioning, not just one portal at a time, but for both, cloud and network resources. Number 2, synchronized SLAs. SLAs is what rules the business here. If there are good SLAs, we're in business. If there are not, we are not in business. The current situation is this is a very fragmented market. You get SLAs for networks, clouds, applications, so on and so forth, and when you have a problem, you don't know who to call. So one point of accountability, centralized SLA management. Number 3, hybrid implementations, because when you talk about centralizing resources at data center level, you optimize for cost. As soon as you are happy with your data center performance, you realize that you have to decentralize. Therefore, the need for pushing content to the edge, CDNs, and we claim that you should also push computing to the edge by means of cloud nodes that we make available as part of our solution. They optimize for performance, they optimize for QoE. Last but not least, elastic orchestration of all of those resources on demand. And that's pretty much what our cloud-bound solution aims to deliver.
Okay, synchronization and on-demand access to content is becoming, whether it's enterprise or whether it's consumer, is really the basis of what we're talking about here. And worldwide, that's one of the interesting things about our panel here, is that we're talking about these models being presented and validated worldwide. And there's no one better than Alex Keighley, who has really put this together. He's not only at Bitcentral, which is, if you don't know this, the #1 basic cloud system in the world because of the relationships with CNN and the news that you see on a nightly basis around the world, but also with Associated Press and Reuters. And I'm going to ask Alex to kind of move through this really quickly. There's a couple questions that I have. Actually, I have about 20, but now we're going to look at about 2, and then we're going to throw it right out to the audience. So, Alex, please.
Okay, great. I'm going to put an hour-long presentation into about 5 minutes. And I'm going to talk about an industry that I now work in, which is actually the local broadcast industry in the US, which, if anybody thinks that that industry is on its last legs and is now irrelevant, it's not. Herman Cain is probably going to withdraw from the nomination now because a local TV station called Wagga in Atlanta found his mistress of 13 years and brought it to the world, and the rest is going to be history. But just quickly, the news production world in the US today looks something like that, and that's a workflow chart. I don't expect you to look at it, but it's all about the content being drawn into house and then something happening to that content locally and then producing it and pushing it out, historically just broadcasting it, but now, of course, pushing it to lots of different platforms. And what you've got there is hugely expensive editing booths, you've got hugely expensive servers bringing in content, you've got hugely expensive play-out servers, and you've got a lot of expensive people in expensive office space, usually in a downtown area of a town. And of course, that's a very traditional workflow, and that's going to change. And I'm going to talk about why that is now, because today, if you have a browser and an internet connection, you can produce the news anywhere. You can now edit, you can look at a live feed, you can log it, you can edit it, you can choose to publish it, and when I say publish it, I mean to anywhere, any rundown on any news channel, to any website, to whatever platform you want from anywhere in the world. And it really is going to mean that you're going to move out of the newsroom. It's going to fundamentally change the way that we produce news. You're able to share stories in a way that previously the only way you could see what your neighboring, your sister station. So for CBS, WCBS in LA might want to look at the story of something that's happened in San Francisco, and KPIX is looking at, has the story here, but they can't see it in LA unless they put it over the bird and it comes over the satellite and they can see it and they can say, oh, that isn't actually what I wanted. So of course what is now enabled by the cloud is the ability to see the content before you want it. And you can say, okay, that's what I want, that precise piece of content is what I want, and pull it to you directly because it's all in the cloud. It also enables you to share stories, distribute to multiple places. So Allan talked about our relationship with CNN, so we distribute content to about 1,100 affiliates globally of CNN, and they historically had all their content pushed to them via satellite, which is hugely expensive, is chronological, so you have a feed that one story goes over the bird, the next story goes over the bird, and so on. And if something happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it might be 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon before it goes over the bird and is delivered into the affiliate's newsroom. Today, they can put it on a website immediately. It's immediately visible. Any of their affiliates can see it, decide to download it, and it's very, very quick. So, you can go in, you can look at all the stories that are available to you at any one time. You can preview them. You can say, that's what I want. You can say, oh, look, and the metadata, which in a longer version of this presentation, I talk a lot about metadata because that's how you find all this stuff when it's in the cloud. And that's all generated from the camera through to the newsroom production system. So you can find your story on the Pope and you can bring it to you. You can also say, well, I only want a bit of it. So you say, this is a 10-minute piece of content. I only want 2 30-second clips of it. And you can edit it in the cloud and pull it to you. And when you decide what you want, you can actually say, well, actually, I want the highest resolution version. I'm a 1080i house, and I want to have that version of the story. Or you might say, well, actually, we're still working on in an SD world, and I only have a 4x3 needs, and so I'm going to bring that to me instead. It enables you to have the right flavor at the right time. And interestingly, it works both ways, so you can push content into the system from anywhere in the world. Remember I said all you need is an internet connection. Well, you know, today, and I'm sure we're not unique in this, any of our customers can push content from anywhere in the world into their newsroom just simply by having a laptop and an internet connection. But really the most important thing for me is that what it means for everybody in my world is that that's where I do my work from. That's the view from my local bar in Laguna Beach, where I live, and I can really do my work from there. I can edit content, I can publish it to wherever I want, and I can watch the sun go down. There you go.
Wow, that's a beautiful spot to be in, Laguna Beach. You know, which raises a question, because it's really consistent throughout all of the presentations and discussions, and that is, you know, has the cloud really enabled a democratization of business processes and technologies? You know, are we really looking at the way like Photoshop or legal software has put things into really the hands of the end user, being able to share the content around the world, while it's enterprise or while it's consumer-centric? So are we looking that this may be the next phase of P2P entertainment sharing and product sharing?
Okay, well, from my perspective, because you're able to see the content from wherever you are, it's very easy to decide that's what you want to use. A perfect example is we have a large group of TV stations owned by Raycom, who down in the southeast, and they have seen the utilization of existing content, so they haven't had to go outside to buy it or get it from a national news source, has gone up by about 400% since they started using what is effectively cloud access, and it's really significantly increased.
It's a consistent number. Yeah. Any other comment?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing that happening in our industry.
Are those the new models, the point peer-to-peer? I mean, consumer being able to have this available to them, somebody else having them they monetize it to another consumer, or monetize it to an outlet of some sort?
Right, I mean, the technology has reached a democratization point at which it becomes affordable and accessible. And that is because there are the networks and there is the infrastructure and the platforms to support that. The beauty of cloud computing is that much of it is transparent to the end user, so people can do whatever they feel like doing. But what's most important on the business side is that we can shrink the delivery cycles. My customers used to take more than a year to deliver a new application. With these systems we are discussing now, it comes down to a lower investment and only, you know, sometimes a few months, sometimes just a handful of weeks.
Okay. Guys, Steve? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key here is that it really enables the creation and sharing of niche content, right? I think that's where you're seeing it most. Is you know, people have this specific long tail interest that's not being satisfied by other providers, and so they're going about and creating it themselves and then sharing it with them. But again, I think, you know, one of the challenges that really comes back to it is how do you find that, right? You know, if I start creating content about, you know, some specific hobby that I have or niche that I have, how do other people who share that interest find it and be able to start enjoying it as well too?
So the whole URL a little bit before going to Ted is navigation, you know, finding like interests and working with that, which really doesn't exist out there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think democratization, in the sense as Steve just said, is that it lowers the cost, you know, the barriers to entry to participate. But it doesn't. What it does is takes the inefficiencies out of the system. Meaning, you've always been able to do things like create comp tapes, you know, take your records and rip them onto tapes and make comp reels. But playlists is much easier to do, and the acceleration is you can do it much faster. You know, so people have always been able to do these things if they can afford it, but now you can do it cheaply. You can do it much faster than you've ever been able to do it before.
Yeah, it's you know, it's in this case it kind of leads me to the question. It's like it's obvious that socialization via devices is compelling, you know, and very potentially revenue generating. Is the cloud going to be a resource in creating social exchange of products, content, versus existing sites like eBay, Google, and for that matter, even Ultraviolet? Is it going to change their models, having the cloud available to so many other people? Jose, your new offering that's going worldwide, is that something that's going to open up the floodgates, keep it away from the gatekeepers a little bit?
So it certainly changes the current market dynamics, and very briefly, those of you following the cloud, you might remember a report published by McKinsey a couple of years ago. In that report, McKinsey was saying, look, the public cloud is great, it's doing many things for everyone, though, excuse me, and this was 2 years ago. They were also saying, hey, have you thought of taking advantage of these technologies to create your own private cloud? So the world we are in is one in which we have public, private, hybrid cloud, so on and so forth. What we are saying right now, to answer your question, is that there is a third way, which is a vertically integrated system, a carrier cloud, that changes the dynamics because it does benefit from the both of both worlds. You get all of the advantages from a privately secure, high-performance cloud system, as well as the economies of scale and elasticity of the public cloud. So that changes dynamics, market dynamics for all of us, whether end users, business, operators, so on and so forth.
Okay, I've seen a lot of nodding heads down with Ted and Steve.
Yeah, just quickly, I think the question is what happens intercloud, that the cloud is, the walls of the cloud are not impermeable. And just in the TV Everywhere space, we have this notion of mediation, but also of IDs, but also the federation of IDs, where because I can do it here, I can also do it over here. And so at the asset level, you can say, because I have it in this cloud, I should be able to have it in that cloud as well. I shouldn't only have it in this cloud. So I think how they interoperate becomes very important.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, one of the key things to be careful about here is consumer expectations, right? You know, there's a lot of technology that goes into making stuff available on multiple platforms and multiple clouds for delivery to the consumers, and so the consumers do have this expectation where if I have it over here, why don't I have it over here, right? And I think, you know, ultraviolet, the idea there is that I buy it once and then I'll be able to get it everywhere. Except right now in their launch and their implementation phase right now, I can't, right? You know, if I buy it on Best Buy, yeah, I can get it through Flickster, but I can't stream it through Comcast, right? And so I think, you know, that's where we have to be careful about looking at the mixture of the technology and the business models to make sure that we really are meeting the consumer expectations on the overall service.
There is a threshold, you know, it's performance, it's security. Unless we settle for that as table stakes, nothing else is going to go further. So we need to make sure that whatever is available there meets these basic expectations.
Absolutely. Yep.
So we're looking at the clouds being able to hold the storage of the content or the documents or whatever might be out there. The cost of bandwidth is lowering, but we all know that the networks are being overwhelmed at this time. You know, because of the cloud, does this spell like a dangerous period for companies like SanDisk, who are based on storage devices? Is that still a model that's existing out there as we, you know, is this a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back because of the advocation of the cloud? Where do the storage guys live?
Well, having moved from from a tape-based world where you'll have in a newsroom you'll have a room full of hundreds of tapes that get pulled out on a regular basis to a digital file-based world. Storage, I remember when 6 terabytes seemed like quite a lot. Today, 100 terabytes doesn't seem like anything. And we have broadcasters who generate a terabyte a day of stored content. And it lives locally or it lives somewhere else in the cloud. They have it cheaper, they can scale, they have it managed properly, and hopefully they have more than one copy of it so that when California drops off into the ocean, it doesn't get lost.
As we just experienced that little moment. You know, it comes back to, okay, so we still have a lemming society. People really do like to collect their media. They still want to have it resident. They still want to have it be ported around to different devices themselves versus this perception that we're going to move to the cloud. Like everything's going to be streamed on an ongoing, constant basis, spontaneous acts of receiving the kinds of content you want. So it steps in, that leads me to one last question. Actually, I have a few, but in this case, you know, I want to move from grid computing to time sharing to, you know, these elements. But Are we starting to step into an area where the governments are going to get involved? Is this something that, from a control standpoint, you know, regulating cloud services is information utilities? Do you see this as we move more to the consumer versus the enterprise system, which is controlled and protected and not being distributed? Are we going to look into this area of information utilities? Just one last question from me. This could lead me into a whole other areas. But the governments, do you see them ever stepping into this and controlling it like they've attempted to do with other facilities of the internet? No? Steve?
Well, so personally, I hope not, because I hope that that there's a lot of innovation and business model that drives it more than the government. But I could see definitely the government getting involved in terms of if we start having issues with privacy and misuse of privacy, that the government would definitely get involved in that, right? And I think one of the things that you worry about is today with my content, if I have a physical content, right? If I have my my iTunes on my iPhone or my collection of DVDs, right? It's very private, it's very secure. I can touch it, it's tangible. If that goes off in the cloud now, not only do I worry about the security of it and the access of it, and am I going to have it when I'm on my flight back home this afternoon? But now I worry about the privacy of it, right? Now people can look at what have I put into my library, and I think if that starts getting misused in ways for promotions or for advertising, then I could see the government definitely getting involved in that.
Okay, that makes sense. Ted?
The only context I can think of in the near term is international, trying to maintain the integrity of international borders. You always have that impulse where certain countries are trying. But I think domestically, the normal kinds of pressures you see that bring in government intervention, like too much consolidation, or trying to extract excessive fees, or excluding one group, groups or people. You don't really see that going on right now.
Not yet.
There's too much, the economics are just getting better, and there are many participants, and everyone is participating. So you don't see those kinds of pressures right now, I think, that would say the government needs to rush in. And,
okay. It really kind of plays into the fact that this is really kind of the accelerator for a lot of new business offerings. Yeah. Being able to have your content or whatever the offering at another remote location and having that accessible by your potential target is going to be very advantageous for any new entrepreneur or any existing entertainment company, media, or for the like of educational delivery as well for content.
There is another angle to it, just complementing your answers. I mean, the cloud is redefining, the cloud social media is redefining democracy as we know it. There are plenty of examples by now of participatory democracy or attempts to get to that all over the world. So what is this new democracy that we live in? Is one where the individual is empowered to make a difference, but where there is an understanding that it takes a team, it takes a group to make a difference. Regulators should understand that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's, again, getting back to Ted's point, is like that's country by country. I mean, the openness of democracy or capitalization. Is there anyone out there that has any questions that we want to ask to the panel? I mean, here's an opportunity to come directly to the key individuals promoting this worldwide at this time. Gary?
Yeah, this has to do with managing consumer expectations, and you're talking about there being some sort of standard between holder or owners of clouds, and I was wondering who would be the best entity maybe to develop some standards so that could be achieved.
Standards? Any ideas on that?
Do you mean from a technology perspective or from a sort of business rules kind of perspective?
Primarily technology, but then business rules, I guess, as well.
So I'm going to divulge a kind of personal philosophy that many people might not agree with, but I think standards are good once you've innovated. I don't think standards are good in terms of innovating, and so I think as you look at trying to do newer things and experimentation, it's best for vendors to just get together and do something and experiment and see what sticks, and then from there figure out what needs to be standardized, as opposed to going in and trying to figure out a standard up front. There are areas right now, where we're looking at, for example, promotions. One of the things that we're really focused on, we're trying to figure out how do we do promotions across multiple platforms, and how do you deal with metadata, as Alex was bringing up, that comes in different formats from different places. How do you deal with being able to control the systems, understand contract rights on your content to decide whether you can put an ad in it or whether you can put it into a bundle. And there's a lot of standards that need to be developed as part of that. But I don't think I would turn to a standards organization to define that up front. I think it's something that we need to innovate around first and then put the standards in place to make it interoperable.
Okay.
I think that's probably the easiest way to do it is at the metadata level. And if we had our way, we would say everybody has to give you their metadata in order to be able to aggregate it together so that the consumer can easily tell where everything is, what cloud is it in, so that I can go and pull it out of there.
Okay. All right, we're getting a heads up here that we're hit our time deadline. So I appreciate everybody's interest that we have, especially the panel. Thank you for hanging through all of this and being together. There's a lot that we could continue probably for another hour. I know we could have a discussion on this because it ramped up very quickly on the phone calls that we had. So thank you very much. And Fred, thank you for arranging all of this that we had these last few days. Appreciate everything. Thank you.